Hey folks, welcome to Moonshift Audio. My name's Jack. I'm a mix engineer and producer based in Bristol, UK. I put out a new video every week, so please do like and subscribe. This week I'm going to show you how to make a track in the style of I Like the Way You Kiss Me by Artemas. Artemas is smashing it at the moment, and with this song hitting over 1 billion streams on Spotify, I thought I'd make a tutorial to show you how to create a dark synth pop track in the same vein. This week I'm looking at the backing track, and next week I'll show you how I got the vocals. Here's a preview. If you'd like to work with me as a producer or mix engineer, you can get in touch at moonshiftaudio.com. But for now, let's jump into this tutorial. Okay, so here we are in the session, and as usual, I'm going to start with the drums. Now, the way I often like to work is pull up an instance of battery and just pull in a few samples that I think might have the right vibe. So I had a look on Splice, I pulled up a couple of kicks, and quite a few snares. I feel like the snare sound in this track is really important and it's quite distinctive, so I really pulled in quite a few options there to get that right, and a few hi-hats. And if we pull up the pattern that I programmed, it's super simple, right? Little bit of velocity alteration on the hi-hat just to kind of help a little bit of a natural phase, but I feel like this track and the Artemas original has almost got a kind of like drum machine loop sort of vibe. It's like he's just set a loop going, built the track over that. The drums, although they're very driving, they're not showy and they're not like an important part of the sort of interest of the track. In fact, the whole track is actually really nice and simple, chunky, powerful. I love it. And the drums just reflect this. So have a quick listen to this. This is just the drums. And you can see that I went for the first kick, this snare as well to sort of reinforce that, and pretty simple hi-hat there. I have done a fair bit of work on these, so we'll have a quick look at the kick. We can see the inserts that I've got going over here. For this track in general, and certainly on the drums, distortion has been a very important feature. So I've got a decapitator here. Let's just hear this without. In fact, I'll bypass all the effects on that kick drum and solo it. So it's quite a nice steady drum. There's a lot of low end there, which I love. I've left this on the default A setting, pulled the tone down a bit, and pushed the drive up to 3. Can hear that's adding a lot of weight there. I followed that up with an envelope shaper, and what I'm doing is I'm just kind of tightening that up a bit. I'll play it without. Can just hear the sort of tail of that. I pulled the release down by 10 dB. If I boost it, that's what I'm losing. Because we've got a lot of bass going on in this track, and the kick doesn't need to be taking up all that room. We'll save a bit of headroom, and yeah, we'll just kind of tighten things up by just kind of pulling those tails back a bit. You could do this in battery at the sample stage, but I'm using an envelope shaper for that. Last up, Pro Q3, and you can see I'm doing some quite hefty boosts here. Turn these bands off. First of all, a lot of weight down there at 73 Hertz. But because it's been tightened up with the envelope shaper, it doesn't sort of take over. Again, if I now bypass this, you can really hear it. The other boost is for the kind of click, which you often will find about 2K. Just bringing out some of the sort of smack on that kick drum. And that's it, that's our kick. We can have a look at our 2 snares. Again, I'll turn off all of the effects on this smack snare. It's actually quite distorted just as a sample. I've just brought out some more of the kind of harmonics on that, roughed it up a bit. Again, default setting, just driver 3. Nothing else has been touched there. Then I've filtered it out massively with a Pro Q. Not much else. A little bit of a presence boost. Then I've gone into trash, and I'm making a lot of use of the Convolve module. This is a preset that I've tweaked. It's a gritty snare preset. And the Convolve sort of adds almost like a kind of bit of a reverb around that. Just sounds ever so slightly wet. And when you add to it this second snare, which I've actually dropped a reverb right on the track there. Quite a heavy mix. And I'm using a boost here to bring out the low end. Kind of got the mids and that still quite thin sounding high snare in the mix. We've almost got the snare sound there. And actually when you bring in the kicks, because there's a kick under every hit of that snare, it suddenly doesn't sound thin anymore. And it's quite aggressive. I like that tone, particularly of the smack snare there. Hi-hats, not much going on here. Literally just a decap to kind of like rough them up, add some harmonics, help them cut through the mix. Last up, the drums all go through the drum bus. And here we've got a Pro Q3, which is something that I've automated. So at the moment it's bypassed. We'll have a look at that in a minute. A trash, which is also currently bypassed. You can see there's some automation down here. This is for the intro of the track. And there's an iHeart NY with some parallel compression going on there. That's with that bypass. Just adds a bit of crunch, just even more kind of weight behind those drums. And that's basically it. So we can take a quick look at the intro now. And as I mentioned, on the whole drum bus, we've got this Pro Q and this trash, and they are, just for this intro section, unbypassed. They're active. And so we go from this to this. So the trash really fuzzing that up and then thinning it out massively, doing a sort of radio filter there with the Pro Q3. And alongside that, we get the first instance of the bass, and that sounds like this. And this is a preset that I've tweaked quite a lot. And I feel like this bass is really, really vibey. And it almost feels kind of swung. And I know it's sidechained, right? You can see down here on the left, I've got a kickstart on there to sort of pump that with the kick. But there's more to it than that. And so I've been playing around with the velocity because it's got that sort of the offbeats are really accented. So you can see here I've got the... And if we look in the matrix, I've assigned the velocity to the amount of envelope 2 that affects the filter cutoff. So a higher velocity will mean you get more of an envelope on that filter cutoff. I've got a video on how you can use velocity and programming to make more expressive synth lines. I'll put a link to that down in the description. But this sequence of notes is basically it. It's on a loop for the whole track. I've got a compressor just really holding those notes down, about 6 dBs of compression, so it's not slamming it, but it is holding it in place. Decapitator, just roughing it up a little bit. Pro Q, this is thinning it out quite a lot. I've scooped out all the subs. some of the low mids, and actually some of the top, just to stop that kind of fizzing away too much. Then we're going through another layer of distortion. Fattening that up a lot there. And then I decided to thin it out a huge amount and split this into a second layer. And then we got that kickstart. It's only at a 70% mix, but it is just giving it a little bit of a swing. And I felt like for the intro, that was enough. Got this nice sort of distorted kind of radio effect almost before we get into the body of the track and we bring in the other layers of the bass. So we're going from this and that's a really nice bit of impact there. So the second layer of the bass is the same synth patch, the same notes literally copied across. You can see the down, up velocity there. And all that's changed really is the processing. So I've still got the same Pro C, the same decapitator, just giving it a bit of bite there. The same Pro Q3, just thinning it out because we've got another sub layer, 2 layers in fact, to come under this. Then I've got a retro color, just adding a little bit of wobble there and a little bit of extra distortion. Just want this to be really rough and imperfect, you know. Then we've got that same trash, this time with the convolve module switched on. I turn that off for the thin bass. And that is really transformational. And a lot of that is the convolve. That's what's adding the width, adding the depth. I do love that module. And then again, a kickstart. Just helping to sort of pump that in time with the kick drum. So that's the thin bass and the less thin bass together. So they definitely both add something. And then to fill out the low end, this is a patch that I made myself. It's a sine wave and a saw wave, or a sort of rough saw wave from the JNO oscillators. Not much to that at all. Compressing it just to really tighten that up. And a bit of distortion from an RC20. Again with the kickstart, not too much. Just giving that a little bit of movement. And when we add that into the mix, that's the weight, the low end power of the bass, but I just felt that it was still missing something. So I ended up pulling up, this is just a stock sampler from Cubase, Hallion, could use any sampler, and I've just pulled up an electric bass preset, playing the same notes. I'll just bypass the inserts. Now, a sort of live bass like that, you need to put quite a lot of work into the programming if you want that to actually sound like a real person playing a real bass. But actually, for the purposes of this, I didn't care. I just wanted a little bit of extra fatness and body to the bass line. So I've processed that. I didn't want to interfere with the subs. We've got enough of that coming from the sub synth. Scooped out a bit of the highs and the lows. Decapitator. Driving that pretty hard, getting that kind of slightly fuzzy texture, and then quite a pronounced sort of kickstart. So here's the track without that picked bass. Now bring it in. Yeah, it's just adding a little bit of that low end body that I really like. So this is just the bass. And here we go. Great stuff. And that is our drums and our bass. There are a couple of incidental drums which are worth looking at. I've got a crash, literally nothing going on there at all. It's actually more like a kind of clap impact, that. And I've got these two claps, and they're exactly the same, but I've got a dry and a wet. And the reason I split them onto two tracks is because I wanted a nice tail off the back of them. But if I was to put them both on the track that has that Valhalla reverb on it, you sort of lose the impact of the second one. But by having this one dry, it almost sounds a little bit kind of clipped. And I really like the difference between those. So coming out of the intro. I just think it works really, really well. Got a pluck sound here. This is a key sound from Analog Lab, and it sounds like this. I'm thinning this down to mono because we've got quite a few hard panned elements coming up, and I just wanted to make room for those at the sides. Anyway, so here's the intro. This is everything then now. So the vocals come in at this stage, the guitar comes in, the bass gets filled out, the drums filled out. It really does come in with a bang, and I really love that impact. I'm not getting into the vocals in this tutorial. There's some quite fun stuff. I was playing around with some sort of AI voice changes there that I want to show you next week. So we'll just take a quick look at these guitars. I played two lines that are very similar. These are not complicated lines, single note riffs basically, and I panned one to the left. And I've used a compressor. I really like the chorus that you get from the jazz amp in Guitar Rig 6. If I was to bypass that, we're probably getting a bit of drive out of that, I would have thought. Just turned off the reverb as well, you can see on the left there. Following the guitar rig, I've scooped out a lot of the lows. And you can hear that is hard pan to the left. And then we've got another line, which I pan to the right. It's basically the same line, just at an interval above. And we've got the same guitar rig preset and almost exactly the same Pro Q3. And by panning those hard left and right, give the track some really nice width and also leave space in the center for the vocal. I've sent these to a group with just a little bit of a presence boost. You can see that I put this in the sides only. Just helps them to cut through. And there is some reverb there. Quite a lot of reverb actually, and I've put a delay first in that effects return chain. Then I've put the Arteria spring reverb, a nice kind of messy, dirty sounding reverb, suits the track perfectly, and then I've just rolled off all the lows. So if you want to hear that with just the reverb, subtle, because the delay is fully wet with that reverb after it in the chain. But it does help just add a little bit of extra sustain, a little bit of extra depth. So the rest of the arrangement is built around the vocals, which as I said we're going to look at next week. But there is just one more element that I put in for the outro, and that is another pair of guitars. This is pan left, but it's not pan all the way left. So it's just 4 bars that I played in, and I've looped that. My guitar was a bit out of tune, so I've dropped an auto tune on there that works fine. And I'm using a slightly different setup in guitar rig here. I've got the Tweed amp, which is a not so subtle copy of a Fender amp with some ensemble and some delay and reverb. We're also going to a reverb there, which is similar actually. It's a spring reverb, but without the delay. And I basically pulled the same trick as before, played another line in an interval above, panned that one slightly to the right. And I'm doing a little bit of playing around here with a riff filter. So the guitars come to this bus, I'm adding a bit of extra drive, help them cut through the mix, and it also sort of glues them together a bit, throwing the same distortion on both. Bit of presence here to help them cut through the mix. And then yeah, this riff filter, which you can see I'm automating. Got the resonance on max, so it's almost like a kind of like flangey, kind of like wah-wah style effect, and it just adds a little bit of interest there. And that's basically it in terms of the instrumentation. Like, it is quite straightforward. The sounds are all very in your face. They all take up a lot of space. The mix is very full. The mix is very loud, but there's still room for a vocal. And I'm going to take a look at that with you next week. That's it for this week, but please do like and subscribe for more tips, tricks, resources and downloads from me at Moonshift Audio. Till next time.